My name is Brianna Hayes. I'm 32 years old, and I should have known something was wrong the moment my husband Derek stood in our bedroom doorway, staring at the red dress I'd laid out on the bed. "Wear the navy one instead," he said, his voice careful, measured. "It's more appropriate." I looked up from fastening my earrings, confused. "What's wrong with the red?" "I thought you loved this dress." "I do. It's just," he paused, and his eyes wouldn't quite meet mine. "Tonight's important, Bri. The Portland office executives will be there. Patricia from operations. VP-level people. The navy dress is just better. That word had been showing up a lot lately. Better restaurants. Better wine. Better neighborhoods. 3 months ago, Derek got promoted to regional director at Cascade Financial Group, and suddenly everything about our life needed to be better, including me, apparently, but I was too excited to question it. This party was supposed to be our celebration. For 7 years, I'd worked double shifts at Seattle General, pulling 60-hour weeks as a nurse while Derek finished his MBA. I'd held us together financially, emotionally, through every late-night study session and every final exam. I'd believed in him when he doubted himself, pushed him when he wanted to quit. Now, finally, we'd made it. His career was taking off. We could breathe. We could build the life we'd always talked about. So I changed into the navy dress. It was elegant, conservative, the kind of thing you'd wear to a corporate funeral. The red dress stayed on the bed, bold and forgotten. Before I tell you what happened at that party that changed everything, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button. Trust me, what I did next will show you why underestimating the quiet one is always a mistake. The thing is, I wasn't always the quiet one. Before I became a nurse, I spent 2 years as a forensic accountant for the IRS. I tracked money launderers, tax evaders, people who thought they were smarter than the system. I was good at it, really good. But the work burned me out. I wanted to help people directly, to see the impact of my efforts in real time, not just in spreadsheets and court documents. So I went to nursing school at 25, started over completely. That's where I met Derek. He was working toward his MBA at night while managing a bank branch during the day. We bonded over being older students, over our working-class backgrounds, over our determination to build something better than what we'd grown up with. Derek's parents had both worked in manufacturing in Tacoma. My mother, Lorraine, had been a public school teacher in South Seattle for 30 years. We understood each other. Or at least, I thought we did. The apartment felt different as I touched up my makeup. Bigger somehow. Emptier. We'd moved to this Capitol Hill condo 6 weeks ago, right after the promotion. 2 bedrooms, floor-to-ceiling windows, a view of the Space Needle that cost an extra $800 a month. Derek said we needed to live at the right address now. I'd wanted to wait, to save more, but he'd insisted. "You ready?" Derek appeared behind me, adjusting his tie in the mirror. He looked good. He always looked good, but tonight there was something different. A hardness in his jaw. A distance in his eyes. "Ready," I said, forcing brightness into my voice. He looked me over, and I saw it. The slight tightening around his mouth. The way his gaze lingered on my hair, natural curls I'd spent an hour perfecting, before dropping away. "You look nice," he said finally. But it felt like he was checking a box, completing a task. "You look nice. Acceptable. Appropriate." The Uber ride to the penthouse was quiet. Derek scrolled through his phone, responding to work emails. I watched Seattle slide past the window, the October rain turning the city lights into watercolor streaks. I tried to remember the last time we'd really talked, about something that mattered, something beyond logistics and schedules and what needed to be better. I couldn't. The penthouse overlooking downtown Seattle was on the 42nd floor of a building I'd only ever seen from the outside. The elevator opened directly into the apartment, and I stepped into a world I'd only glimpsed in magazines. Marble floors. Modern art that probably cost more than my car. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the city like a living painting, and people. So many people. Derek's colleagues, their partners, all of them dressed in that specific way wealthy people dress when they're trying to look casual. Expensive fabrics cut to look effortless. Jewelry that whispered instead of shouted. I felt the navy dress suddenly wasn't conservative enough. Or maybe it was too conservative. I couldn't tell anymore. Derek! A woman's voice cut through the ambient conversation. I turned to see a tall, elegant woman in her mid-40s approaching us, champagne glass in hand. Her smile was perfect, practiced. So glad you could make it. Patricia. Derek's whole demeanor shifted. His posture straightened. His smile widened. Thank you for hosting. This is incredible. Well, you've earned it. Patricia's eyes slid to me, assessing in a way that made my skin prickle. And this must be my wife, Brianna, Derek said. Was it my imagination, or did he hesitate before saying wife? Lovely to meet you. Patricia extended her hand. Her grip was firm, brief. Derek speaks so highly of you, did he? I hadn't heard him speak about me at all lately. The party swallowed us. Derek moved through the crowd with an ease I'd never seen in him before, laughing at jokes I didn't understand, referencing people and places I'd never heard of. I followed, smiling, nodding, trying to find my footing in this world that felt designed to exclude me. I must have fallen asleep on the couch, still wearing the navy dress, because the sound of the front door opening jolted me awake. The clock on the cable box read 3:17 a.m. Derek stumbled in, loosening his tie. Even from across the room, I could smell it. Perfume. Not mine. Something expensive, floral with notes of vanilla. The same scent Patricia had been wearing. You're still up, he said, not quite looking at me. I waited. My voice came out hoarse. I thought maybe we could talk about what happened. Nothing happened, Brianna. He kicked off his shoes, heading toward the bedroom. You embarrassed yourself, and I handled it. End of story. I stood, my legs unsteady from sitting too long. Derek, you threw me out of that party like I was trash. In front of everyone. He stopped, his back still to me. For a long moment, he said nothing. When he finally turned around, his face was blank. Completely empty of emotion. I need to give you something, he said. He disappeared into the bedroom, and I heard drawers opening, papers rustling. When he came back, he was holding a manila envelope. What is this? I asked, but I already knew. You develop instincts as a forensic accountant. You learn to recognize the weight of important documents, the particular sound they make when they slide against each other. Divorce papers, Derek said, his tone flat, businesslike. My attorney drew them up last week. I was going to wait until after the party, but honestly, tonight made it clear we can't keep doing this. Last week. He'd planned this before the party. Before the humiliation. The navy dress suddenly made sense. He'd been managing optics, making sure I looked appropriate one last time before he cut me loose. You've been planning this. It wasn't a question. I've been thinking about it for a while. He set the envelope on the coffee table between us like a barrier. We're not compatible anymore, Brie. I need someone who fits my lifestyle now. Someone who understands discretion, who knows how to move in these circles. Someone white, I thought. But I didn't say it. Not yet. 7 years, I whispered. I worked myself to exhaustion so you could get that MBA. I believed in you when no one else did. And I'm grateful. The word sounded hollow. But gratitude isn't enough to build a life on. You're a nurse. I'm a regional director. We want different things now. I wanted to scream. To throw something. To make him see what he was doing, who he was becoming. But I stood frozen, watching this stranger wear my husband's face. He moved toward the door. I'm staying at a hotel tonight. We can discuss logistics through our attorneys. The settlement is fair. You'll be fine, Derek. My voice stopped him at the door. Who is she? There's no one else. The lie came too quickly, too smoothly. He'd practiced it. The door closed behind him. I heard his footsteps fade down the hallway, the elevator ding, and then silenced. I stood there for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. Then I picked up the envelope. Inside were the divorce papers, exactly as he'd said. But there was something else. A small stack of papers, stapled together, that had clearly been included by mistake. Someone, probably Derek's attorney, had printed an email chain and tucked it into the wrong folder. My hands shook as I read the sender name, Patricia Chen, VP of Operations. Subject, looking forward to Cabo next month. Darling, the email was dated 3 weeks ago. I scrolled through the thread, my stomach churning with each message. Can't wait to have you all to myself on the beach. We'll have to be more careful at the office. HR is getting suspicious. Once the divorce is final, we won't have to hide anymore. 3 weeks ago. Derek had been planning this for at least that long. Maybe longer, but it was the attachment that made my blood turn to ice. The document was titled Asset Transfer Summary, Confidential. I recognized the format immediately. Years of forensic accounting had trained my eyes to scan financial documents the way doctors read x-rays, seeing what others missed. Derek had been systematically moving money. Our money. Money from our joint accounts, money I'd earned working 60-hour weeks at the hospital, money I'd saved during my years at the IRS, all of it, carefully transferred over the past 6 months into accounts bearing only his name. The first transfer had happened in April, right after he got the promotion. $15,000 from our savings account to something called Mitchell Holdings LLC in Delaware. Then another $20,000 in May. $30,000 in June. The amounts grew larger as he got bolder. By September, he'd moved $180,000. I felt my chest tighten. That was more than just our shared savings. That included the $50,000 inheritance my grandmother left me when she passed 2 years ago. Money I'd kept in our joint account because I trusted him. Because we were partners. Because I'd actually believed in us. But it got worse. The next page showed offshore accounts. The Cayman Islands. 3 separate accounts, totaling $667,000. I did the math in my head. That was everything. Every penny I'd saved from my IRS years, every dollar I'd earned at the hospital, every bit of money we'd accumulated together. Gone. Moved to accounts I couldn't access, couldn't touch, couldn't prove existed without this document. Derek had been planning to leave me with nothing. No, that wasn't quite right. According to the divorce settlement offer buried in the papers, he was generously offering me $50,000. For 7 years of marriage. For putting him through business school. For believing in him. $50,000 while he walked away with nearly $1 million. I sat down hard on the couch, the papers scattered around me. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold them. This wasn't just betrayal. This was theft. Calculated, methodical theft, and Derek had made one crucial mistake. He'd forgotten who I used to be. Or maybe he convinced himself that version of me was gone. That 2 years of forensic accounting for the IRS didn't matter anymore because I'd walked away from it. Because I'd chosen nursing. Because I'd chosen a life of helping people instead of hunting down criminals. Derek knew about my past. I'd told him everything during those late-night conversations when we were still happy. How I'd spent 2 years tracking money through shell corporations and offshore accounts. How I'd helped build cases against people who thought they were untouchable. How I'd been good at it, really good, but how it had slowly eaten away at me. I needed to do something that felt real, I'd told him once. Something where I could see the person I was helping. Not just numbers on a screen, but actual human beings. He'd said he understood. He'd said he admired my compassion, but what he'd really thought was that I'd gone soft. That I'd lost my edge. That the woman who could track money through 6 different countries and a dozen shell corporations was gone, replaced by someone who brought people water and changed bedpans. He was wrong, because there was one thing about forensic accountants that Derek clearly didn't know. We never stop being careful. We never stop documenting. We never stop keeping backups of everything. IT was a habit, burned into me during my IRS training. Every document gets copied. Every transaction gets recorded. Every piece of financial paperwork that came through our household, I'd scanned and saved to an encrypted cloud drive. Bank statements, credit card bills, investment documents, tax returns, everything. I'd told myself it was just professional paranoia. A quirk from my old life that I couldn't quite shake. But now, looking at Derek's betrayal laid out in black and white, I realized I'd been protecting myself all along. Some part of me had known, had seen the signs, had prepared for exactly this moment. I pulled out my laptop and logged into the encrypted drive. 7 years of financial records. Every deposit, every withdrawal, every transfer. A complete digital paper trail of our entire financial life together. Derek thought he was smart. He thought he'd covered his tracks, that he had no idea who he was dealing with. My phone showed 4:23 a.m., but I didn't care. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I needed. Simone answered on the third ring, her voice groggy but alert. "Bree? Girl, what's wrong?" "I need your help," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Steady. Cold. Nothing like the woman who'd been crying on this couch an hour ago. "Derek's leaving me. And he's stealing everything." Silence. "Then, I'll be there in 20 minutes. Simone had been in my nursing program, but unlike me, she'd only lasted 1 semester before realizing healthcare wasn't her calling. She'd switched to criminal justice, eventually becoming a private investigator specializing in divorce cases. We'd stayed close over the years, meeting for drinks once a month, sharing stories about our completely different careers. She arrived in 15 minutes, still in sweatpants, her locks pulled back in a messy bun. She took one look at me and pulled me into a hug. "Girl," she said quietly. "I've been waiting for you to see through him." I pulled back. "What?" Simone moved past me into the apartment, heading straight for the kitchen to make coffee. "Derek's been showing his whole behind for months now, Bree. You were just too close to see it." "What are you talking about?" She poured water into the coffee maker, her movements precise and familiar in my kitchen. "You remember that dinner we all had? Back in July, after his promotion?" I did. Derek had been irritated that I'd invited Simone without asking him first. He'd spent the whole meal checking his phone, barely participating in conversation. He code-switched the entire night, Simone continued. Every time the waiter came by, he'd change his whole voice. His posture. Everything. Acting like he was born into money instead of growing up in Tacoma with 2 parents working factory jobs. "Lots of people code-switch," I said weakly. "Not like that." Simone turned to face me, her expression serious. "Not where they erase everything about who they really are." And the way he talked about that promotion? Like he'd earned it purely on merit? "Bree, we both know how these corporate games work." "Something else was going on there, Patricia," I said. "The mentor?" Simone's eyebrows rose. "Let me guess. She's not just a mentor." I handed her the emails. Watched her face as she read through them, her jaw tightening with each line. "That son of a..." She stopped herself, looking up at me. "Okay. What else do you have?" I showed her everything. The asset transfers. The offshore accounts. The divorce settlement that would leave me with almost nothing. Simone's expression shifted from angry to professional. This was her element. He really thought he'd get away with this. "How long were you with the IRS?" 2 years. Financial Crimes Division. A slow smile spread across Simone's face. "Does he remember that?" "He knows. He just thinks I'm different now. That I've gone soft." "Oh, baby." Simone set down her coffee mug. "Men always think compassion means weakness. They never learn until it's too late." She pulled out her phone. "I've got a guy who specializes in tracking offshore accounts. And I know a divorce attorney who will eat Derek alive. But first, I need to know something." "What?" "How far are you willing to go?" I thought about the walk home in heels. The humiliation at the party. 7 years of my life spent building up a man who was throwing me away the moment I became inconvenient. The money he'd stolen. The future he'd planned with another woman while still sleeping in my bed.A as far as it takes, I said. Simone's smile widened. Good. Because we're not just getting your money back, Bree. We're going to make sure Derek Mitchell never underestimates anyone again. The next 3 weeks, I became an actress. Every morning, I'd wake up with swollen eyes from crying myself to sleep. Except the tears were real only half the time. The other half, I was up until 2 a.m. with Simone, building our case. Derek had moved into a hotel downtown, texting me occasionally about giving each other space. I responded with short, wounded messages. Okay. I understand. I just need time. He thought I was falling apart. In reality, I was putting him together like a puzzle, piece by damning piece. Simone's contact, a financial investigator named Jerome, started with the offshore accounts. Within a week, he'd traced not just the $667,000 Derek had moved, but another $180,000 I hadn't known about. Money from a bonus Derek claimed he'd never received. Money from stock options he'd told me got taxed away to nothing. Total sitting at $847,000, Jerome told us over video call, his screen showing a web of transactions that looked like a spider's work. Including what looks like a $50,000 deposit that matches the date of your grandmother's passing. My inheritance. He'd taken my grandmother's money and hidden it where I'd never find it. Can we prove it's hers? Simone asked. Got the paper trail right here. Transfer from the estate account to their joint savings, then out to his LLC 3 days later. Jerome pulled up the documents. Man, didn't even wait a week. That's cold, but that was just the money. Simone was digging into something deeper. I pulled Derek's employment file, she said one night, spreading papers across my dining table. Had a friend in HR who owed me a favor. Look at his promotion timeline. I scanned the documents. Derek had been promoted to regional director on April 15th. But the recommendation for his promotion had been filed on March 3rd, signed by Patricia Chen. Now look at this. Simone slid another paper across. It was an expense report. February 14th, Valentine's Day. A dinner for two at Canlis, one of Seattle's most expensive restaurants. Charged to Patricia's corporate card, coded as client entertainment. He took her to Canlis? I felt sick. He told me he had to work late that night. It gets better. Simone's voice was grim. Or worse, depending on how you look at it. Weekend trip to Portland in January. Both of them. Hotel rooms on consecutive floors. All on the company dime, coded as a leadership conference. There was no conference, I said, already knowing the answer. No conference. I checked. But there were a dozen other trips. San Francisco in December. Los Angeles in November. 6 months of this, Bree. The affair started last October, right before the holidays, October. I remembered that month. Derek had been distant, distracted. I'd thought it was stress from work. He'd been pursuing the promotion, networking constantly, working late. I'd been supportive, understanding, giving him space to focus on his career. He'd been falling in love with someone else. All of these trips are expense fraud, Simone continued. Personal travel disguised as business. That's a terminable offense at any company, but especially at a financial institution. They take ethics seriously because they have to. What about Patricia? I asked. She had to approve these expenses. She approved them, processed them, and covered them up. That's not just ethics violations. Depending on the amounts, we might be looking at embezzlement charges. Jerome's voice came through the speaker. I'm seeing a pattern with Patricia's accounts too. Lots of personal charges on corporate cards. We're talking over $200,000 in questionable expenses over the past year. The pieces were coming together. This wasn't just an affair. It was a whole system of corruption, and Derek had walked right into the middle of it, but there was something else bothering me. Something I couldn't quite name until my mother came over on a Sunday afternoon, bringing groceries, and that look that said she knew I wasn't telling her everything. Baby, you're not eating, Lorraine said, unpacking fresh vegetables into my refrigerator. Don't tell me you're fine. I know what fine looks like, and this isn't it. I'd been avoiding my family. Not because I was ashamed, but because I wasn't ready to explain it all yet. How Derek had changed. How he'd thrown me away. How I'd been so blind. Derek's leaving me, Mama. The words came out flat. He's been having an affair with his boss. He's stolen almost $1 million. And he did it all while I was working myself to death to support his dreams. My mother set down the bag of oranges she'd been holding. Slowly, carefully, she walked over and sat beside me on the couch. I know, she said quietly, you know, not the details. Not about the money or the affair. But I knew something was wrong with that man. She took my hand. I've been teaching kids for 30 years, Brianna. You learn to spot when someone's performing. When they're trying to be something they're not. Why didn't you say anything? Would you have listened? Her voice was gentle. You loved him. You believed in him. Sometimes people have to see the truth for themselves. I thought about all the times Derek had corrected me. How I spoke. How I laughed. How I wore my hair. All the small adjustments he'd requested, suggested, insisted on. Mama, did I make it easier for him? By being too black for his new image? Lorraine's grip on my hand tightened. Baby, no. Don't you dare put this on yourself. But he changed after the promotion. And I'm the one thing that didn't fit into his new life. I'm the reminder of where he came from. That's exactly right. My mother turned to face me fully. You reminded him of who he really is. And he hated you for it. The words hit me like cold water. Derek grew up in Tacoma, she continued. His parents worked hard jobs. He went to public school, community college. Same as you. Same as most black folks trying to make it. But somewhere along the way, he decided that wasn't good enough. He decided to erase all of that and perform something else. He told people he went to private school, I said, remembering conversations I'd overheard at the party. He said he had a challenging but privileged upbringing. He made it sound like his family had money, and there you were, telling the truth. Talking about community college and hard work and being proud of where you came from. Lorraine shook her head. Baby, you didn't embarrass him. You reminded him of who he really is, and he couldn't handle it. I felt something crack open inside me. All this time, I'd been questioning myself. Wondering if I'd been too much, too loud, too authentically myself. If I'd somehow failed to rise to his new level, but the truth was different. Derek hadn't risen. He'd just learned to hide better. I need to call Tasha, I said. My sister answered on the first ring. Finally. Mama said you were going through something, but you weren't talking. What's going on? I told her everything. The affair, the money, the fraud. Tasha listened in the focused silence she'd perfected in law school, not interrupting once. When I finished, she said one word. Good that you're finally seeing him clearly. Good that you have documentation. Good that you called me before you did something stupid like try to handle this alone. I heard papers rustling. I'm sending you the name of a divorce attorney I trust. Someone who specializes in high-asset divorces with fraud components. Her name is Michelle Chen, no relation to Derek's mistress. She's expensive, but she's worth it. Tasha, I can't afford expensive right now. Derek took everything, which is exactly why you need her. She'll take the case on contingency if I ask her to. And trust me, once she sees what Derek did, she'll be motivated. My sister's voice softened slightly. Bree, this is what I do. Let me help you. While Tasha connected me with Michelle, Simone was working another angle. She'd been digging into Cascade Financial Group's policies, and what she found was damning. Their ethics code is stricter than most, she explained, pulling up the employee handbook on her laptop. Section 4.2, personal relationships between employees at different levels of authority are strictly prohibited. Any such relationship must be disclosed to HR within 30 days or it's grounds for immediate termination. Did Derek and Patricia disclose? What do you think? Simone scrolled down. Section 6.7, all business expenses must be legitimate, documented, and approved by an officer not involved in the expense. Personal expenses charged to company accounts constitute fraud and may result in termination and criminal prosecution. Patricia approved her own expenses, I said, and Derek's. They've been covering for each other for months. Simone pulled up another document. But here's the real problem for them. Cascade Financial is a federally regulated institution. They have to maintain strict ethical standards because they handle other people's money. If it comes out that a regional director and a VP have been committing expense fraud, the company's reputation takes a hit. Regulators start asking questions. So they'll want to handle this quietly, exactly. Which gives us leverage. Simone leaned back. But there's more. I found a pattern with Patricia. She's been doing this for years. Different employees, different relationships. Small amounts at first, then bigger. The expense fraud has been escalating. How much are we talking, over the past 3 years? Close to $300,000 in questionable charges. Restaurants, hotels, trips. All coded as business expenses. All approved by her. I felt my forensic accountant brain kick into gear. That's embezzlement. If she's using her position to approve personal expenses, that's stealing from the company, which is a felony if it's over a certain amount. Simone closed her laptop. Patricia Chen isn't just having an affair with your husband. She's a criminal. And Derek walked right into the middle of her operation. Or he knew exactly what he was doing, I said. The pieces were clicking together. He gets the promotion. Gets access to better expense accounts. Starts traveling more. More opportunities to hide money, to build his offshore accounts, using her system, Simone finished. She teaches him how to work the fraud, and in return, he's her cover. Her alibi. Her protection. We sat in silence for a moment, the full scope of their crimes spreading out between us.My phone buzzed. A text from Derek, attorney, said we need to schedule mediation. Sooner we get this done, sooner we can both move on. I showed it to Simone. He's in a hurry, she observed. Probably wants this wrapped up before anyone looks too closely at the finances, I typed back, okay. I'll have my attorney contact yours. What Derek didn't know was that Michelle Chen had already filed a motion to freeze all of his accounts pending a full financial disclosure. What he didn't know was that Simone had compiled a 47-page dossier on his fraud and Patricia's embezzlement. What he didn't know was that copies of everything were sitting in a safe deposit box, in my encrypted cloud drive, and in the hands of people who knew exactly what to do with them. Derek thought he was going to walk away clean, rich, and free. He had no idea the trap was already closing. Derek accepted the settlement terms in 36 hours. Not 48. 36. Michelle called me with the news while I was working a shift at Seattle General. I stepped into the break room, listening as she explained how Derek's attorney had reached out, desperate to avoid litigation. He's liquidating assets to come up with the cash, Michelle said. Selling his car, pulling from his 401k, taking a loan against the offshore accounts. It's going to cost him everything, but he'll have your money within 30 days. And Patricia? I asked. Cascade Financial's board received Tasha's ethics complaint yesterday morning. Patricia was placed on administrative leave within 2 hours. Their internal audit team is reviewing 3 years of expense reports. Michelle paused. It's worse than we thought, Brianna. They found over $300,000 in fraudulent charges. Patricia wasn't just stealing with Derek. She'd been doing this long before he came along. I sat down hard in one of the plastic break room chairs. What happens to her now? The company will likely terminate her and file criminal charges. The U.S. Attorney's Office is already reviewing the case. Embezzlement at this scale, from a federally regulated institution? She's looking at serious prison time. After we hung up, I sat there for a long moment, processing. This was real. Derek was losing everything. Patricia was facing criminal charges. The life they'd tried to build on lies and stolen money was collapsing. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt tired. and free. Simone texted me that afternoon, "Girl, turn on Channel 5 News." I pulled up the live stream on my phone. A reporter stood outside Cascade Financial's downtown headquarters. Sources tell us a major investigation is underway at Cascade Financial Group following allegations of expense fraud involving multiple executives. While names haven't been officially released, our sources confirm that at least 2 employees, including a vice president, have been placed on administrative leave pending the outcome of an internal audit. The story was breaking. Not just Derek and Patricia's private scandal, but a corporate investigation that would have ripple effects throughout the company. My phone rang. "My mother, baby, I just saw the news." "Is that yes, Mama?" "That's Derek's company, good." Lorraine's voice was fierce. "Let them all see what happens when you think you can treat people like they don't matter." 3 weeks after the confrontation, I sat in Michelle's office again. This time, Derek wasn't there. Just his attorney Robert, looking exhausted and defeated. "The full settlement amount has been transferred," Robert said, sliding documents across the table. "All $1,147,000. The condo deed has been transferred to Ms. Hayes. My client requests no further contact." Michelle reviewed the documents, then nodded. "Everything appears in order." I signed the papers, my hand steady. 7 years of my life, reduced to legal documents and bank transfers. But at least now I had what was rightfully mine. And Derek had nothing but the consequences of his choices. "There's one more thing," Robert said, pulling out an envelope. "Derek wanted me to give you this." After he left, I opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter. "Brianna, I know you won't believe me, but I'm sorry. Not for getting caught. I'm sorry for who I became. For forgetting where I came from. For forgetting who stood beside me when I had nothing. You were right at the party. I was embarrassed. But not of you. Of myself. You reminded me of the truth I'd been trying so hard to hide. That I'm just a kid from Tacoma whose parents worked factory jobs. That I went to community college. That everything I have, I built with help from people who believed in me, people like you. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that losing you made me realize what I'd lost long before the divorce. I'd lost myself." Derek, I read it twice, then folded it carefully and put it back in the envelope. The apology was probably genuine. Derek was facing the complete destruction of everything he'd built. His career was over. His reputation destroyed. His relationship with Patricia dissolved the moment the investigation started, but the apology didn't change anything. It didn't undo the humiliation. Didn't erase the theft. Didn't repair 7 years of slow erasure, of being made to feel like I wasn't enough. I threw the letter away. 2 days later, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Ms. Hayes. This is Dean Robertson from the University of Washington's MBA program. The voice was formal, careful. "I'm calling regarding Derek Mitchell's degree." My stomach dropped. "What about it?" "We received an anonymous tip that portions of Mr. Mitchell's thesis may have been plagiarized. During our investigation, we discovered significant sections that match published work from forensic accounting journals." He paused. "The byline on those articles is Brianna Hayes." I sat down slowly. "I wrote those articles during my time with the IRS." "Yes. And Mr. Mitchell apparently used substantial portions of your research in his thesis without proper attribution. This constitutes academic fraud." I remembered helping Derek with his thesis. Reading drafts. Offering suggestions. He'd asked so many questions about forensic accounting, about tracking offshore money, about corporate fraud detection. I'd thought he was just interested. That he wanted to understand my work. He'd been stealing it. "What happens now?" I asked. "The university is revoking Mr. Mitchell's MBA degree, effective immediately. We've also notified Cascade Financial Group, as his degree was a requirement for his position." After the call ended, I sat in stunned silence. Derek hadn't just lost his job due to the expense fraud. He was losing his entire credential. The degree that had launched his career, that had gotten him the promotion, that had made him feel like he'd transcended his background, gone. Because he'd stolen from me even then, the criminal charges against Patricia came down fast. The internal audit revealed a pattern of embezzlement spanning 5 years. Hotels, restaurants, personal trips, even shopping charges coded as office supplies. She'd been stealing from Cascade Financial for years, and Derek had just been her latest accomplice. The U.S. Attorney's Office filed federal charges. 10 counts of embezzlement, 5 counts of wire fraud, 3 counts of conspiracy. The total she'd stolen exceeded $400,000. Her husband, a surgeon I'd never met, filed for divorce within a week of the charges being announced. Her picture was on the front page of the Seattle Times business section, below the headline, VP charged in massive financial fraud scheme. The trial wouldn't happen for months, but her attorneys were already talking about a plea deal. She was facing 10 to 15 years in federal prison. The Cabo trip was permanently canceled. Along with everything else, I followed the news coverage with detached interest. Patricia had built her career on manipulation and theft. She'd probably been targeting Derek from the start, recognizing someone hungry enough to compromise his values for success. Or maybe they'd found each other, 2 people willing to do anything to escape who they really were. Either way, they'd both lost everything, and I was still standing. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I stood in the lobby of my new office building in Pioneer Square, watching the morning light filter through the historic windows. The brass nameplate beside the door read, Hayes Financial Advocacy. The settlement money had given me options. I could have stayed at Seattle General, gone back to the IRS, or done nothing at all. Instead, I'd built something new. Something that combined everything I'd learned as a forensic accountant with everything I'd gained as a nurse, the ability to see the numbers and the person behind them. My practice specialized in helping women navigate financial abuse and divorce. Women who discovered their husbands had hidden money. Women who'd been told they were bad with finances while their partners systematically stole from them. Women who needed someone who understood both the technical complexity of untangling fraud and the emotional devastation of betrayal. Morning, boss. Simone walked in carrying 2 coffee cups, handing me one. She'd left her private investigation practice to become my director of investigations. We've got 3 consultations scheduled today. 2 potential clients, 1 referral from that family law firm downtown. Behind her came our 2 other employees, Jasmine, a recent accounting graduate I'd hired as a financial analyst, and Michelle Rodriguez, a paralegal who specialized in divorce law. Small team, but mighty. The Jenkins case files are ready for review, Michelle said, setting a folder on my desk. We traced another $40,000 her husband moved to his mother's account. He thought we wouldn't look there. I smiled. They always thought we wouldn't look somewhere. That was their first mistake. My phone rang. A Seattle area code I didn't recognize. I answered anyway. Brianna? It's Nicole. From the hospital. Nicole had been one of my colleagues at Seattle General, a labor and delivery nurse I'd worked with for years. We'd lost touch after I left. Nicole, hey. How are you? Not great, honestly. Her voice was strained. I need help. Professional help. My husband. I think he's been hiding money. Moving things around. I just found out he opened accounts I didn't know about, and I don't know what to do. I grabbed a pen. Tell me everything. An hour later, I'd taken detailed notes on Nicole's situation. Her husband, a real estate developer, had been systematically moving their assets into LLCs she'd never heard of. Classic financial abuse, the kind I'd seen a dozen times since opening the practice. I'm taking your case pro bono, I told her. You helped me through some of my hardest shifts at the hospital. Let me help you through this. After we hung up, I sat back in my chair, looking at the notes. This was it. This was what I'd been meant to do all along. Not choosing between forensic accounting and nursing, between numbers and people, between head and heart. But bringing them together. Using my technical skills in service of genuine care. I'd spent years thinking I had to be one thing or another. Derek had reinforced that belief, making me feel like my background in finance was something to hide, something that didn't fit his new image. But the truth was different. I didn't need to shrink any part of myself. I just needed to find the right place to grow. 3 weeks later, I ducked into a coffee shop near my office to escape an afternoon rainstorm. I was waiting for my order when I saw him. Derek sat alone at a corner table, hunched over a laptop, looking older than his 34 years. His suit was off the rack, nothing like the designer clothes he'd worn during his regional director days. His hair needed cutting. He'd lost weight, and not in a healthy way that I could have left. Should have left. But something made me stay. He looked up and saw me. His face went through several expressions: surprise, shame, anger, and finally resignation. Brianna. He closed his laptop. I didn't expect to see you here. I work nearby now. I wasn't sure why I was telling him this. I opened a consulting firm. I heard. He gestured to the empty chair across from him. Can we talk? Just for a minute, against my better judgment. Saturday you destroyed my life, Derek said quietly. Not angry, just stating what he believed to be fact. My career's over. My degree's gone. I'm working as a junior analyst at a startup that might not exist in 6 months. Everything I built is gone. I looked at him for a long moment. No, Derek. I didn't destroy your life. I just stopped letting you destroy mine. There's a difference. You didn't have to go nuclear. The IRS investigation, the ethics complaint, all of it. You could have just taken your money and walked away. You stole from me, I said. You humiliated me. You erased who you were and tried to erase me along with it. What did you expect me to do? Say thank you and disappear quietly? Derek's jaw tightened. I was under so much pressure. The expectations, the image I had to maintain, the image you chose to create, I corrected. Nobody made you lie about your background. Nobody forced you to be ashamed of where you came from. You did that yourself. You don't understand what it's like, he said. Being the only black guy in those rooms, trying to prove you belong, trying to show you're just as good. I understand perfectly. My voice was steel. I've been the only black woman in plenty of rooms, Derek. The difference is I never thought I had to stop being black to belong in them. He looked away. You told people you went to private school, I continued. You erased your parents' real jobs. You pretended you grew up with money. And when I showed up at that party and reminded everyone of the truth? You couldn't handle it. Not because I embarrassed you, but because I reminded you of who you really are. And you hated yourself for it. That's not fair. It's completely fair. I stood up. I spent 7 years making myself smaller for you. Quieter. More appropriate. Trying to fit into whatever box you needed me in. And it still wasn't enough, because the problem was never me. It was you. You were running from yourself, and I was just collateral damage. Derek sat in silence, staring at his coffee. I hope you figure out who you really are someday, I said. Not the corporate performance. Not the lies you told to fit in. The real you, the kid from Tacoma whose parents worked hard and taught him to do the same. That person was worth knowing. This version? I gestured at him. This version is just sad. I walked out of the coffee shop without looking back. The rain had stopped, and the Seattle streets gleamed with that clean, washed light that comes after a storm. My phone buzzed. A text from Simone, client meeting in 30. You good? I typed back, on my way. Never better, and I meant it. That night, I sat in my apartment, the one I'd bought with the settlement money. Smaller than the Capitol Hill condo, but mine. Completely, undeniably mine. I thought about the woman I'd been at that party 6 months ago. Wearing the navy dress instead of the red one. Letting Derek dictate my words, my appearance, my entire presentation. Believing that if I could just be appropriate enough, quiet enough, right enough, I'd finally be acceptable. The embarrassment I'd felt that night wasn't about being too much. It was about being asked to be too little. I'd spent 7 years shrinking myself for a man who was trying to erase his own truth. Every time Derek corrected how I spoke, he was really correcting himself. Every time he suggested I wear something more appropriate, he was really trying to dress up his own insecurities. Every time he made me feel like I didn't belong, he was projecting his own shame about where he came from. The real tragedy wasn't that our marriage ended. It was that it took so long for me to realize I'd been apologizing for existing while Derek had been apologizing for being himself. Two people drowning in shame, but only one of us willing to swim. I opened my laptop and started typing. Not case notes or financial analysis, but something else. A blog post for my company website. If you've ever been told you're too much, this is for you. The words came easily, flowing from 7 years of holding back, of making myself smaller, of believing that my authenticity was the problem. Too loud. Too opinionated. Too black. Too working class. Too real. If someone needs you to shrink yourself to make them comfortable, the problem isn't you. It's them. And their discomfort with your truth is usually just a mirror of their discomfort with their own. I wrote about Derek without naming him. About corporate performance and code switching and the price we pay when we erase ourselves to fit in. About how success built on lies isn't success at all, just an expensive costume that eventually falls apart. The post went up at midnight. By morning, it had been shared 200 times. By the end of the week, 2,000. Women reached out, telling their stories. Men too. People who'd spent years making themselves smaller, quieter, more palatable, and were finally ready to stop. My practice grew. Hayes Financial Advocacy became known not just for tracking hidden assets, but for helping people reclaim their whole selves in the process. The money mattered. The justice mattered. But what mattered most was helping people understand that they'd never been the problem. If you've ever been told you're too much, or made to feel like you need to shrink yourself for someone else's comfort, I want to hear your story in the comments. Because your authentic self is never the problem. The person who can't handle it is. Remember to like this video if Brianna's journey resonated with you, and subscribe to Revenge with Jessica for more stories about people who refuse to stay small. Share this with someone who needs to hear that the embarrassment wasn't theirs to carry. It belonged to the person who was too ashamed of themselves to celebrate anyone else. Derek wanted someone who fit his lifestyle. Someone appropriate. Someone who wouldn't remind him of who he really was. He got exactly what he deserved, nothing but himself to face in the mirror. I got something better, myself back.